All right, we're live. Welcome back to Tuesday Night Live on the 10 Hook Monty YouTube fishing channel. Man, I'm looking forward to this. It's been a while since the two of you, the three of us, the four of us all got together and talked a little bit of fishing. So first off, thanks for coming on. I know you guys are super busy. Drew, it seems like you're on a freaking live stream every night or close to it. And Jake, you're a busy man as well. Congratulations on the Guntersville win, Drew. It was fun.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
was it was a very fun week, and it was pretty unexpected. So I was tickled because honestly, in terms of lakes that I enjoy fishing tournaments on, Guntersville's not on the top end of that list. So to go there and to beat it was really, really nice.
It was a fun watch, man.
What would be really funny, and of course nobody else is really privy to this, but Drew and I always talk, throughout practice, even if it's just literally to pass the time. Like we may not even talk fishing. It's just we're both out there for hours upon hours. And it would be really funny to listen to our conversations and how terrible everything is and how pessimistic we both are. And then one of us always ends up catching it.
And I mean, to be honest though, like the field just makes the lake look so good. Like we go to a lot of places that have high potential, but they're not easy places.
Correct.
Like the easy places we go to are always at the end of the season or they're in the team series events. But the regular season stuff, although we go to places with high potential, man, it's just like everybody's just so good they make the lake look better than what it is.
You said it best.
You guys freaking crushed them, man. That was a fun.
It was insane.
That was a fun walk.
They crushed them.
Yeah. Struggled a little bit, man. And I was watching some of your Facebook posts going up to the tournament, and you definitely weren't confident about what you had found.
No, I mean, honestly, I did not have a great practice. I kind of let my history on the TVA steer me in a direction that wasn't really the right direction, but I did have probably a better practice than I led on, but it was this weird deal of like, I have to take a really big gamble for, this scoping period to work, or I need to make a long run to go to this fishing deal. It was just nothing came together that week. And I did. I took a pretty big gamble in my scope period on the first day, and it did not work out. Just kind of put me behind the eight ball. And, the cool thing with our format, and we kind of, burn this into the ground a little bit, but it's so much fun knowing where you are and knowing what you have to do to turn things around, to make it into something, even if it's just salvaging the event. Like all throughout that event, I knew both day one and day two what I needed to do. And you could say that every day in every tournament, but in reality, when you're struggling, you don't always know how bad of a struggle that really is. In our game, obviously, to the second. And I knew going into that second day with 15 or 16 pounds out, I would need to either catch up in my scope period, go back to my fishing areas where I was catching enough to keep pace. There were no groups around, so I knew I couldn't make any ground up. So I knew, like I said, I either had to make something happen in the scope period and go back and refish that, or if I didn't, we need to go look for a group. And that's what I really did the entire second day. And it just one of those deals didn't work.
So how is that? Maybe an obvious question here, but you guys lean pretty heavily on the scope period to capture as many bass as you can in that period. So that's ultra important to your game plan. How is it going through that scope period and you're getting to the last 20 minutes and you're not catching them like you need to catch them, and you got two more periods without looking at them? How do you? I mean, that's got to be going in your head. You're like, dang, I'm already like 2 hours into this and I've only got 20 pounds or something.
Well, first off, I'll say you don't start thinking that in the last 20 minutes. That thought crosses your mind in the first 20 minutes.
Right.
Like it is the instant the bell rings, somebody starts catching them, particularly that first period. Something else that I did a little bit differently just for the area that I wanted to scope in, I decided to scope in my second period, which for whatever reason never seems to work out for anybody. But I had some reasons for that, and it worked out fairly well. Like I held my own fishing, just winging a chatterbait around, but But when I only caught 1 4-pounder in that scope period, and you're right, man, it is a pressure cooker. I think Drew went through one of those days at Guntersville last year, and I hate to bring that up, but I think out of a season and one tournament, we have both had one scope period that did not go our way, which is honestly, that's pretty incredible for all of the circumstances and everything to always come together like it seems to. That's the deal with this format. You're gonna have some of those. We work really hard, both of us, and strategize to give ourselves a backup. We know fish are always going to evolve, and they're constantly changing this time of year. And what we probably don't talk about a whole lot is how important our B and C stuff is, and how close is that in retrospect to where your A hole is, more or less, and just a backup for a backup.
Yeah. Got to know where your A hole's at. It's very important.
Very important to know which one's the A hole.
I was waiting on it.
Yeah. Well, into that one.
So then how do you practice for that, knowing that that scoping period is going to be crucial to your daily total? Are you trying to find that pattern right off the bat and then find a B and C pattern, or are you looking for that non-scoping pattern? I mean, how does that work for you guys?
Go ahead, Drew.
For me, I think there's a pretty hard defining line that determines how you spend your practice and how you use it, and that is the spawn. When you're pre-spawn winter, your scope period has to be your sole focus. You do not stop practicing for your scope period until you find THE place, a place that you're like, of all the places I've been to, if you don't know where you're starting your scope period, you haven't found it yet. The moment you know where you're willing to start it is the moment you can kind of pull the plug and start doing something different in practice. But in those winter, early spring tournaments, you got to practice it until you find that place. Because, for example, in this tournament, day one, I ran a bunch of stuff because I had the ability to and the time to try and figure something out and figure out where I wanted to be, or, all I did was find out where I didn't want to be. But I caught 43 pounds in my scope period on day one. I did not catch a scoreable for 5 hours after that. If you do that for example, if you do that at Lake Erie, you do that at the summer tournament, like when we were at the Potomac last year, you can't come back from that. Your tournament's done. Mm-hmm. But in the winter, spring tournaments, you can come back from that because you put another good scope period with it, and you just kind of catch enough to keep pace, and you can get yourself through that qualifying round. So really, in my opinion, I'm dedicating my practice to it in the winter, spring tournaments, and I'm still leaning on it. It's still obviously should be your most productive time in the later in the season tournaments, but it's most productive. It's not dominant. Like in the winter, spring tournaments, a good period without it is probably about half or a third of what a good period is with it. In the summer, it's probably 20 to 30% less than what a good period is with it. And so that's kind of just how it shakes out so far from what I've seen. But for me, I'm leaning on it heavy in practice before the spawn. I'm playing it hard, after, but I'm definitely trying to iron out more than one deal once we get past the spawn. But I'll figure it out in the tournament when we're before the spawn, in my opinion.
So twofold question to follow up that. When we're discussing choosing your scope period, what is the determining factor of choosing that time frame? Is it practice, or is it I'm going to go first period every time?
I mean, for me, it's very fishing pressure related. It's kind of fishing pressure and wind and how that dynamic interacts. Does wind matter to you in that tournament? Does fishing pressure matter to you? Generally speaking, it's hard to imagine a situation. It's very rare to have a situation where wind doesn't matter at all. And, generally speaking, your wind trend is going to increase as the day goes on until that final period. So it's very rare that the wind is not a factor and that fishing pressure is not a factor. If it's in the situations where those two things are not a factor, or you get a rare situation like where there's no wind, or where the wind trend is actually higher at takeoff than it is later in the day, those are rare instances. Most of the time it's all fishing pressure and wind related, which pretty much both of those answers drive you to first period. because regardless of whether people have fished there or not the day before, the longest period of time of a break they're ever going to get once we start the tournament is going to be overnight. So for me, overall,
more times than not, both of you first period is your scope period.
Yeah, most of the time. I have done, again, in Guntersville, the first day I chose the second strategically, which didn't look good, but it could have. That area just was void of life when I got back to it. Wind had swapped, blew a bunch of eelgrass in. It really, that particular situation didn't have anything to do with timing. Those fish weren't there in the first period either.
Now you just have to declare that before the period starts, correct?
Correct.
You don't have to declare a third period today. You could fish first period and say, hell, I'm going to go second period.
Correct.
Okay.
The other thing that I'll add to what Drew was saying is, generally speaking, on most bodies of water, on most any day of the year, you've got.
No, we lost your audio, Jake. We lost your audio. You can't hear me. He's saying something real good too. I
guarantee you it's extremely valuable.
Like the super extra juice, top secret stuff.
Haven't been back yet.
You're back.
All right, sorry.
That's all right.
And he's gonna play it off like he knew it was going on, and he was trying to get something off.
He probably really wasn't saying anything. He was just.
So the last thing we heard was this is the easiest way to catch 100 pounds in one scope period.
Exactly. No, I don't know where we cut off there, but what I was saying is, it's obvious our scope period is when we are the most efficient. And so typically speaking, you want to fish for or utilize your scope period, be the most efficient while they're the most active. That's generally in our first period. There's another strategy to that. If you had a pretty good shallow bite or a fishing deal, so to speak, and timing wasn't as important, I could definitely see, again, my strategy going into day one, I could get bit about anywhere I went fishing early in the morning. Once it got into the second and third period, the shallow fish, to me, seemed to kind of get a little weird. You could still catch them, but they were definitely, you didn't even have to be around a bass at daylight on Guntersville to catch one, on a chatterbait or a trap. And so I really wanted to utilize that first period as, efficiently as I can. I also was fishing another bridge on the lake, and I really thought as many fish that were there in practice, there would be too many people there to move around in the first. So, but again, it's all whatever each individual event, you're going to kind of see a different strategy or opportunity there. But again, it really is that first period that you see the vast majority of it go down.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about this year coming up in the LBL division and the BFLs. The first tournament is coming up. So this is my first time being a boater, in the BFLs. So of course I've fished plenty of team tournaments where I was running the trolling motor and stuff. But so MLF has implemented a 3-hour forward-facing sonar period in the Toyota series and the BFLs for 2026. That's something new, and they're just trying to even things out or whatever they're trying to do. They're just experimenting to see how things shake out. But so I'm trying to strategize how am I best going to use that period. And I think there's a lot of people that are used to having it on all day long that are going to be faced with the same scenario. So, one of the questions I had written down was, how do you think those people are going to adapt to that scenario? Like, the anglers that they're used to having forward facing sonar for full access the whole tournament. What's something that they're going to find out that they didn't know? And then, just kind of how to adapt to that scenario. Cause you guys have been doing it for a while now.
From my perspective, I think that's an answer that we really don't have a great concrete, or a question we don't have a great concrete answer to yet, because there's a couple major factors here that are different. Factor A, you guys don't, Toyota's BFLs and Pro Circuit this year, there's not rigid periods. At the spur of a moment, you can flick it on. Meaning you don't have to, the morning bite concept is you try to get on that morning deal, but generally in the summer, that morning deal lasts for the first 45 minutes to an hour of the period. And then your last hour and a half of that period is pretty much just no man's land, chuck around and wait for the second period to start. If you can get out there, for example, let's say it's summer tournament, you can get the first 30, 45 minutes of that morning bite where it's really, really, really productive on the bank. And then the moment you think it's shutting off, you can turn it on and get after it. And the other factor, and I think this is the biggest factor, in my opinion, those are 5-fish tournaments. Meaning if you got them found, if you got THE juice, you pull up on it, you scoop them up, you go back to the ramp and have a pizza waiting on you. Because every fish counts. When we shut it off, we still got to catch them. There's going to be a lot of situations in a 5-fish tournament where you'll have them caught. And yeah, you're going to try to upgrade from there. But if you don't, you could very well have a tournament 1 at 10 a.m. and be done. I mean, just like it's always been. But it could be very much exacerbated by the fact that, like, legit in 3 hours, if you've got to generate 5 quality bites and you've got an area that's legit, you can do that in a pretty swift and successful manner. And the other thing to consider when it's a multi-day tournament is, in a multi-day tournament, why would I, unless I'm concerned about fishing pressure, but if I think I have something special and I only have 1 or 2 places, why would I start my day with scope and go burn a bunch of fish and then pull a couple times and pull out fish that I didn't even have to catch to get to where I got? And so, in a situation like one that I'll use a real world example for one that I've got in my mind for that. You follow Oklahoma this year on the pro circuit. That's a place where you never have more than 3 or 4 places that you can catch a bass. But when you've got 4.5 hours to fish after you've caught your fish, especially that time, in the summer, you're probably going to catch 1 or 2 that end up mattering and culling later on. And so why would I risk burning scope fish that I didn't have to burn and then culling them out later when I already knew where, if I've got a 3-pounder on a stump, and I know he's there, and I pull up and I catch him in the scope period, and then I catch a 3-4 flipping a bush later in the day, and I got to pitch him back, I'm going to be real mad that I caught that 3-pounder that I actually knew where he was.
Right.
And in multi-day tournaments, that's going to be a big player. Is how do you keep from using your fish as much as possible, and keep that 3 hours of scope less as a primary deal and more as a wild card. Like, essentially it's my magic speed boost to bail me out. I think that'll play too. Just because there's a lot of differences when you don't have rigid periods in a 5-fish tournament that's multi-day with that format. That's going to fish and look a lot different than our Bass Pro Tour events do.
Something, a side note here, just listening to Drew, obviously there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of different directions when we talk about forward facing and old school and all this stuff. But 10 years ago, you would never hear a dissertation like that. 10 years ago, we were just trying to figure out what part of the lake they were living in. It's so much more, I don't want to say detailed, but we are so much further ahead as anglers. Really, I say 10. That's being a little. It's more like the past 4 or 5 years. We would never go into an event with a breakdown or a strategy like that. Like, everything is so complex. It's almost like the art of catching the bass anymore, at least at this level, is we can all do it. Like, we're all capable of catching that exact same bass wherever he's at, however we've got to catch him, we can. It's just now a matter of, when do I catch him and when do I go save that one? When do we do this? It's, to me, and I've always been this way, like, that's what gets me excited. The act of catching a bass is somewhat mundane at this point. Like, don't get me wrong, that sounds bad, but I enjoy the fact of knowing that fish was going to be there, even without scope. But just, that's a fishy looking place. Wind's blowing in here, everything's right. Like, I'm gonna catch one right there, and you do. But it's funny how different tournament bass fishing is now than what it was a couple years ago, and I think it's to the good. I mean, I really do.
What Drew was saying, though, it reminded me of, like, 2010 TVA stuff.
Yeah, but TVA, like that summertime.
That whole different animal, right? Like June on the
Yeah,
TVA, you knew when you blasted off, you were headed
Right.
to this bar and you were going to blast them for the first
Yeah.
25 minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. That's like TVA, particularly like the lower end of the TVA there's a little exception there when it comes to that, because you're literally fishing for 90% of the bass that are living in 3% of the water. So it's
Right.
very predictable, very time oriented. Like you're right.
As a self-proclaimed bad ledge fisherman, I think 90% and 3% is a really generous percentage of the water that 90% is living in. Oh man, I was skipping docks at the Kentucky Lake Bass Pro Tour this year. So that TVA stuff, when we're talking about rules of the road and bass fishing and tournaments, and we bring up TVA in the summer, that's when mentally I check out. I'm like, oh, all that stuff, black magic, mystical stuff that happens out there, where I drive by and I go, man, I wish I was that guy, as I'm going from one stretch of docks to the next.
Yeah. I tell you,
But
obviously
every fish counts changes that completely. Where you don't have to go out and blast 25 a day on the same ledge. You can go catch your 2-pounders on dock.
I wish that were true. I so badly wish that were true.
When
There's 102 pounders out on that bar, you know.
True.
When they're out there, that's where you better be. I promise
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Oh,
But one cool thing last year, man, I had some unbelievably cool, things happen. Obviously, the chick Nickajack, like I had some really exciting days, even outside of tournament fishing. But Mr. Gill and I got an opportunity to go out on Kentucky Lake one day, just goofing off, nothing, no filming, it's just two buddies in a boat, and we absolutely trashed them. And out of every day that I fished last year, that is by far my favorite day of fishing. Like, even over the chicken.
that was a ball.
I have not laughed. Like, I laughed until my belly hurt. Between Drew acting like a fool and every time your bait hits the water, we catch one. It was a day to remember. I'll never forget that. It was pretty cool.
It was the one time that I willfully surrendered the steering wheel to my boat for the last, I don't know how, I guess 4 years probably. And I was a co-angler in my own boat. It was amazing. I was like, just drive me to where they live, Jake.
Captain Lawrence.
We did.
And he's like, when we pull up, it's gonna make sense to you as to why they're here. We pull up, and I'll be like, I'm gonna be honest, boss man, it just looks like flat water. And then you go, and I'll be like, oh dang. So that's what I was supposed to be looking for. But it was cool. But to circle back around to the conversation about like how complex tournament fishing has gotten, the concept of like how risk averse you are and what you're willing to gamble really did not exist in a full, like, because the rules now, if you are to fish for offshore fish, you are going to get faced with this dilemma, which is like, you are limited in how much of your tournament day you can allot to fishing for certain fish. Not limited by the fish, you're limited by the format, which means that your ability to gamble, to take risks, to make very aggressive strategy decisions has been increased tenfold. I mean, like, now it's not just like it's a tournament fishing. A lot of it used to kind of feel like, okay, we're gonna shuffle cards and deal them out. Everybody gets one hand, and you can choose whether to play the hand or whether to throw it away and get all new cards. But you're either playing the hand or you're getting all new cards. Now it's like you shuffle all the cards out, and now we're taking a couple turns around, and you have the ability to risk this, risk that, potentially get this back. Like, there's so much more playing of your hand you can do now with the mixed format, based on what other people do around you. It makes the tournament so much more interactive when you compare it to everyone else's experience. Tournament fishing used to be a far more individual experience than it is now, because with this format, like, we had people, I remember, I mean, when we were at Guntersville last week, like, we had people show up in the first period before the first period that would do their ride around, look around and be like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this. I'll be back next period when you guys are gone. And like, that wasn't even a concept years ago. Like, yeah, you could leave and potentially come back and hope somebody's not there, but now they're probably not going to be there. Not think or hope. You like, as soon as they shut scope off, they're not going to be where they were anymore. And like, how you play that throughout your day, one that sticks out to me last year is like when we were at Nickajack and we kind of came out there, everybody was pretty raw. They didn't, most of the guys that made that knockout round hadn't been there for much time, or at all leading up to that knockout round. And I chose to gamble half my day side scanning, looking for a place that I could go catch bedfish. And like, that wasn't even like, yes, you could make that gamble back in the day, but you couldn't do that in Every Fish Counts very well in, for example, 2024. You wouldn't have been able to do that because everyone had scope all day. You would have got buried too deep that you wouldn't have been able to make it back in one period. But I was able to go find some fish, and I charged back from I was in 18th to start the last period, and I came back to 4th. Like, that's a strategy element. That was a gamble that I made based on the format, based on our situation now. And like, the concept of risk management in tournament fishing is absolutely exponentially increased when you talk about a mixed scope format.
Yeah, and then as you're saying that, I was kind of thinking about the format a little. I don't want to say deeper, but I was thinking about it in a different way as well. Obviously you got it's almost like a couple different tournaments within one. You've got the qualifying rounds, and you got the knockout, and then you got the championship, and then obviously you don't want to burn any more fish than you need to make it to the next round. So there's that element of it. But as you're fishing in these different rounds, you're able to look around and see boater A is on the bank, and all of a sudden he's lighting up the score tracker. Well, maybe that is something that you may have overlooked or didn't spend a lot of time practicing that type of bite. And you notice a couple of guys that you see fishing skinny water, all of a sudden, they're putting some weight on the board. So that is that's almost like it's like practicing without practicing. You're letting that person practice for you in a way. And so maybe that doesn't manifest on that day because you've already got a solid game plan, but the next day or in the future, that's something that you got to kind of think about. Like after your scope period, boom, I'm going to go check that because I know that that's happening. It may have been something I overlooked, or I didn't think that the fish were that far into the spawn. They were up there in 5 foot of water. I thought they were still hanging out in the 15 foot or whatever. But that's a whole nother aspect of the strategy that I think a lot of folks that don't fish in the circuits and tournament fish like you guys do, we probably don't think about that, how detailed things can get and just being that aware of what's going on around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great example of that. And there's a good and bad way to utilize that. I'll be the first to throw that one out there. But Saginaw Bay last year was a prime example. I had fish in some offshore cabbage as well as that inside reed edge, like everybody, and I can see thrift out behind me, like a quarter mile. He's close enough to tell what who it is, and so periodically, every 20 or 30 minutes, I would get, I'm up on this inside edge. Knowing that I've got some fish, not his, but that we weren't even anywhere close, but it's the same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my official tell me, let me know every 15 or 20 minutes, give me an update on thrift. And my thought process was, if this deal up here, this inside edge, like I can more or less be fishing 2 totally different patterns at the same time. And all I'm doing is trying to get a feel for those that particular day and those conditions, which groups of fish are biting better, which ones are more predictable or acting more aggressively. And I could better make a decision and make it faster by listening to Score Tracker. He's out there burning them up. I was catching them good on the bank, but when there's groups out there and he's showing it, like you better go do it. And I did. I ran straight to my little group out there and started, whooping on them. Like it was fun. But you can, I'm a little edgy about that. Like I'll play by any rules, but I'd honestly love to see us get away from knowing who it is. I love the live score tracker. I love knowing where we are, but I'd love to not have the names. Just me personally. But
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
an interesting thought. Like,
Yeah.
so you want to know where you stand at that, you know, Jake is in 18th place and he's got 14 pounds to make up, but you don't want to know that it
doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
It's smoke out
Be
there
honest
just
with you.
blasting on him. You can see he's been over, and you can probably get a good idea. But
Is that something you guys have talked about, you know, as anglers in that?
That's a conversation that's come up. This is a can that's been kicked, I think 4 times now in separate off seasons.
I understand though. That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
And look, I'm not trying to throw any bad, you know, any shade on what we have going. It's great. We have not really had any major issues with that, but when you get desperate, you're willing to shed your moral compass at times. We'll put it that way.
Well, so you're just utilizing what you. I mean, it is no different than you looking over your shoulder and seeing him blast them, right?
Yeah, and I will preface because I'm kind of sounding like a hypocrite here. This is this weird fine line of like I think it's perfectly okay to listen to smoke out there, knowing I'm like my group's 5 miles, 2 or 3 miles from him, way out of the like I am not getting in his way at all, but I'm still able to learn from his information. It's another thing. Whether you already know that group is there or you don't, it's another thing to utilize that to go, well, I'm going to go fish that patch of grass now. Like, as soon as he leaves, I know they're in there. Like,
yeah. So that's kind of what I was getting at is not going over there and like jumping his fish or even looking at what bait he's throwing, just what he's doing. And you can run 20 miles down the lake and try to duplicate that pattern.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How many times has the latter happened to either one of you though? Where you've been on something and somebody's run up on you, or
so I'm gonna preface this by saying I don't know how often this happens in a raw sense, meaning somebody's running down the lake, you've been catching them for 3 or 4 hours, and they see you and they pull right up on you with no intention of being there. Here's what I think happens more often. Somebody has fish somewhere. They know where you're fishing. They keep a mental note of where you're fishing and how fast you're catching them, whatever. And in the event that it comes crunch time later in the tournament, they make it an aggressive decision to use your fish to help bolster their weight and then go fish for their fish later. And I think that gets invited a good bit is like, you know, essentially predatory defense of like, hey, I know where he's blasting them, and it'd be a lot easier for me to beat him. Catching some of their fish and then going and catching mine afterwards. And it both helps me to catch some of their fish and it hinders them by less fish available and a little bit more mobility restriction. So, I think that can happen and definitely has happened. But overall, I don't know that can say I've been like raw poached very many times. And to be honest, with our mixed format now, especially if it's scope stuff, their hands are kind of tied if they've already used their scope period. And so it would have to be a later in the tournament adjustment. And honestly, generally speaking, I think people are apprehensive with the fact that they know you can only be there for one period. If they intend to come fish stuff that you have been fishing, they're a little bit apprehensive to be willing to do it at the same time you're doing it. They're probably going to let you get clear and then go fish it after you've been there. So that has mitigated that a little bit, because back when we had scope all day, it was more pervasive because you could just pull straight up somewhere and drop scope and figure out what's going on real quick. It's a lot harder when you don't have eyes to have confidence to pull up right next to somebody just because they're catching fish and be able to figure out all you need to figure out in a short period of time. So it definitely can be weaponized in that manner and does at times. But it's one of those things where like I could be persuaded either way. I really like, knowing who, just because for example, when we were at Guntersville, let's just call a spade a spade. When you know wheelers behind you, that adds another layer to the intrigue of the tournament, to the intrigue of live, and it gives them something else to talk about when they come to me and I'm not catching any fish. So it does add that layer of intrigue. That being said, there's definitely times that can be noted in the past where Score Tracker has been weaponized for somebody to use it to not find a way to fish, but find fish that they didn't know existed prior and just straight up pull up and catch them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with
Jake.
all of that being said, like, man, absolutely love the format. Like, I am in no way, shape, or form, throwing any shade towards this. I don't care what the rules are. We're thinking and strategizing to the point we're always going to find something that we wish we could have or wish we didn't, or it's. I don't want to make this the kind of the whole show by any means, because it's really not a major factor. It's almost, I think, more of like a secondary concern in the back of my mind when somebody comes running by me and I just ran up Score Tracker in the last 20 minutes. There is no question. I just caught him right through this little stretch. Like, I can't help but now I'm trying to strategize for myself to almost like play defense against that guy that I know just saw that. So it's just, I think it's a lot more in my head than what it really plays out to be, what it actually, what happens.
But each day the fields are so small in your guys' events. Like, you're not having 110 guys running around all day long every day.
Yeah,
you're correct. Although
so
I will say these guys are unbelievable. I promise you, Sandusky, what is that, Ohio? Whatever, Lake Erie, 100%. I don't know how many square miles that like our boundary is.
Enormous.
I promise you, there will be multiple people that find the same rock with a group of fish on it. Like, I don't know how we are that good to take a place half the size of Tennessee and with 50 guys, 3 of us find the same rock, but we will. It's unreal how these guys are, how they do it. It's just, I don't know.
Well, there's no secrets in bass fishing anymore.
There's not. And one thing we are, these days we are all very equal in our abilities and our knowledge base. And that's something back in the old day, whatever. Back
2014.
in the day, right. You didn't have that. Like, you would have a David Fritz that just, if it was a crank and bite, particularly like deeper than 10 foot, you pretty well better bet the farm on David Fritz. Like, there's Denny Breyer flipping a jig. We all know those guys. You had this, you had potential to have a niche or a technique that you truly knew that much better, that it didn't even have to always be the bite on that lake, but you could figure it out better than everybody else and make it last longer and win events doing that. You really don't see that very often. You see occasionally a new technique or a new bait and somebody gets on the forefront of it, but it does not take long. They catch them in one tournament on that bait, and I promise you, by the next event, all 50 other guys are going to have that mastered just as well as that guy did.
Yeah. Drew, any plans to do tournament travel vlogs with YouTube?
So travel stuff, not as much, but I am working on YouTube quite a bit this year. I actually posted my first video to YouTube 2 days ago that I posted in years. And I've got 2 more slated to go out over the next couple weeks. So nice. I'm making my return to YouTube this year. It's not as much tournament travel related as it is like, at home, fun fishing, instructional, educational, like fun stuff. Because, man, when we're fishing a tournament, it is really hard without having somebody travel with you the entire time to collect the quality of footage required to actually generate a storyline from a tournament. And I say this knowing full well that I have more free time around a tournament than most guys do, because Jake, there is no way in the universe that Jake could self-film enough at a tournament to generate a storyline, because Jake is busy working on things related to the tournament from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep at night. I generally am not. I'm prepared, but I'm not as I guess comprehensive in my preparation for a tournament day, for example, like I am on an off day or something. I'm a little bit simpler. I'm a little bit more, I guess, consolidated. And so I've got a little more free time, but man, it's hard when we're at a tournament to self-film stuff. And a lot of these guys that do really, really good work on YouTube, you know, their time is very valuable. And to be able to have that amount of time that would be required to create, you know, a good tournament recap vlog, it's just like, it's very labor intensive. And when we're at tournaments, time is of the essence. So,
We got to sleep at some
let
point,
more
right?
YouTube this. Do what?
You got to sleep at some point.
You got to sleep at some point. And for me, that is another aspect of it is I sleep, and I don't like to not, and I will sleep however many hours I need, regardless of what the implications of that are. Meaning,
Drew
if
and
that
I-
mean
Drew and I have eaten a lot of meals together. However, we have never eaten breakfast together, and there's a reason.
yeah, and most days I wouldn't be it's not like I'm getting up at 10, but I'm probably an
No.
hour behind most of the time because, like, dude, if I don't sleep, I've fallen asleep like idling multiple times in practice before, and that's not an enjoyable experience for me. So,
And let's also preface the fact that I'm fishing like 11 events this year, and you're fishing 21.
yeah,
And they're all pretty well in about a 8-month window. Like it's
yep.
You look at that schedule of his, and it's unbelievable.
It's a lot of fishing. I love it, but yeah, it is a lot of fishing. To circle back, where were we before that question?
I didn't know
I
we
don't
were
remember where we
anywhere.
were. I had
That's a
some
good question.
As soon as-
substantial.
JB,
As soon as
moderator.
Jake said something about not being able to find baits, it reminded me that yesterday all them cheater minnows that Drew's been catching them on are sold out. So
Spotlighter minnow got
They
really
better
popular.
have got
really
mine in
fast.
before they sold out.
I tell you what,
Them.
that was really, really cool. It was
was good timing.
fun to be forced into, because I only had one place to use during my scope period in that tournament. I didn't have a parachute plan, and I don't win that tournament if I have a parachute plan, because I promise you I would have pulled that cord and hit the layup a lot quicker if I had a second place. But I had one place that was like mediocre, like maybe 20 pounds in a scope period. And so it just kept me committed to my main area. And I threw that spotlight minnow, aside from 4 scorables, which I caught on the 6-inch jerk minnow. I caught 2 6 1/4s on that second day. But every single other scoreable I caught for 4 days was on that 4 1/4-inch blue gizzard spotlight. I caught one on smoked shad because I ran out of blue gizzard the last day. But it was really fun because I you know, and this is kind of the minnow rabbit hole, is like, you know, of the spectrum of minnow fishing and how it looks in practice, it meaning like in use, not just like in practice. But if you've got a spectrum, I'm here, Jake is here. We don't fish it under the same conditions in the same manner very often. Jake is incredible at catching big ones with it. He's incredible at catching bottom fish, structure fish. He's incredible at throwing, like, you know, with that hinge, throwing that 6 and 7 inch hinge to catch fish that are generally very warm water. And he's very, very good with it in that TVA style, that bottom style, especially fishing for big ones. I play it more in a bait chasing kind of winter type scenario more often. And I do it with a really small minnow most time. You know, I'm using a lot of times 4 1/4, 4 3/4. I don't exceed that 5-inch minnow very often. And it's just because of the situations that I play it in harder. Because once it gets warm enough to throw a worm, I kind of get drawn into that a lot of times. But it was really fun getting to minnow like in the way that I like to minnow, which is like, I almost call it like ice fishing, because I'm making short pitches and I'm fishing it with a very vertical line angle, and I'm shaking the heck out of it. And I'm just rolling it in place and causing it to ever so slightly incline, and I'm fishing it very, very slow. meaning slow over distance, but very fast with the rod. So like if you watch it, I mean, that rod tip's like, I'm shaking the heck out of it, but it's really my hands just like this, like very slow, let them ease up, ease up, ease up. And they eat it. And I mean, over 4 days, I got 200 pounds worth of bites in 10 hours on that minnow. And I missed one fish. One time I missed. Every single other bite I got for the entirety of 4 periods, as soon as they bit it, I got into them. And the one I missed, I reeled it up, I fired it back out, and I got him to bite again. I landed every single bite for 4 days. And that's the thing I love about cold water minnow fishing. Cold water minnow fishing, you don't miss them like you do when it's warm. When it's warm, they'll blow through it. They'll come up on it, eat it, immediately spit it out. When it's cold, dude, they get up on it, they get real tight, and they finally get it. And when they get it, you're just shaking and your line just goes tight. It's not that punk. It's not your line going limp. You're just shaking and your rod tip just goes. Yeah. And you ease back into them. Man, it was a ball throwing that little minnow.
Hey, how important? So you ran out of 3/16 heads. You had a quarter ounce head. You shaved it down to 3/16. How critical is the weight of the jig head in minnow fishing, and specifically in the scenario you were in during the Guntersville tournament? And is it more of a head thing, like a confidence thing, because you just caught 200 pounds on a specific weight, or is it really that big of a difference on that head weight? Because a lot of people, we don't get to experiment with that kind of stuff as much as you guys do.
Yeah. So with the jig head weight, I think a lot of it comes down to pace. It's about pace of retrieve and how fast that fish has a speed that it wants to move,
like horizontal movement.
Correct.
Okay.
Meaning if you move slower than it wants to move, it loses interest. If you move faster than it wants to move, it never closes the distance tight enough for your action to make a difference. Meaning if I'm fishing it really hard, rolling the heck out of it, like that action only matters if that fish ever gets tight enough for it to matter. And if I'm outpacing him, he's never going to get close enough for that action to actually incite him to bite. So I think with minnow fishing, in my opinion, jig head size, meaning like weight, and hook size are absolutely everything. There's a lot of good minnows out there. I love the one that I throw for what I was doing there because it's so steep and fast. But I mean, obviously, there's minnows everywhere. Minnows roll. But what allows your bait to, reach its maximum potential, in my opinion, it all comes down to weight and hook selection more than anything. Because if you spine that bait with a 4/0 hook and use too heavy, too light, it doesn't matter if you're throwing the perfect minnow. It doesn't matter if you're fishing for biters. Like if minnow fishing, they have to choose you. They have to choose to bite. You cannot force them to bite. And so you got to pay attention to all those little details. And most of it comes down to pace of retrieve and maximizing action. And that all comes down to jig head weight and hook size.
How fast do you figure that pace out?
I mean, generally speaking, you don't have to make more than 3 casts at, make a cast at 3 different fish. And after 3 fish, you should know exactly what direction you need to go with jig head weight. And you should probably have a good idea as to what you need to do with your bait profile.
So do you typically go faster or slower? Like if you're throwing out 3 fish, you're seeing a response. What in your head tells you need to add a little more weight to the jig head so you can increase the pace but keep it on that same horizontal plane, or lighten the jig head so you can slow it down while still keeping it on that same horizontal plane?
So basically a little quick tip in that scenario is if I'm throwing a bait that's too heavy, too fast, they're going to light up on it and I'm going to be fishing it and it's just going to leave them behind. You're going to slowly increase the distance until eventually they pull off. If I'm throwing one that's too light, what's going to happen is they're going to shoot up. I'm going to be shaking it and they're just going to totally lose interest. They're going to give up on it pretty quick. And so if it's too light and you're going too slow, you're going to lose that interest pretty much right away. If you're going too fast, you're going to hold that interest for longer, but the distance is going to increase as you retrieve that bait. And that's, are there other responses that could tell you one or the other? Yes. But in terms of if you're looking for a rule of thumb, that right there is the rule of thumb with minnow fishing in terms of if we're just talking about head weight selection and what cues mean what.
Because I think
hold on one second. I just want to know what's your average pitch distance at Guntersville was what? 40, 50 feet, 100 feet?
It was sub 50 on average. I mean, the fish were most of the time between 30 and 40 from the boat.
Yeah. Okay. So piggybacking off what you're just saying, a lot of times us that don't have the experience that you guys do, there's so many different variables to us. So obviously there's the pace, but in the back of our head is, okay, I'm seeing the fish. He comes in really hot. You know, he turns sideways, gets really bright, and then he's gone. Or he's just kind of petering behind it, but he doesn't want to commit. So a lot of people are like, is it the shake? Am I shaking it too fast? Am I shaking it too slow? He's seeing my line. I don't have a Sakamata shad on, you know, I don't have the right minnow on. I don't have the right color. There's all these other variables. So would it be right to say somebody can go out and buy, you know, a quality minnow and get comfortable with that minnow and build some confidence in that minnow and use that as kind of a litmus minnow, and then make your adjustments based off of that minnow? Or how would you approach all those different variables to someone that doesn't have the experience that you guys do when they're going out trying to get confidence in minnows? And there's so many things that they're seeing on you know, the front looker, and they're trying to analyze it all and make sense out of it. That was kind of a long-winded question, but does that make sense?
Yeah,
Jake has the most comprehensive minnow knowledge of anybody I know. So he's far more qualified.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, there's a multitude of different ways they will bite. In my opinion, pace and the presentation overrides the exact amount of purple flake in this color or this exact minnow. Or I mean, I have seen it where, you know, call it a non-flanged or a non-winged minnow has a much faster, a lot more erratic roll, like the spotlight minnow will elicit more of a reaction than the winged or the flanged, where it's a lot slower, a lot more consistent. But overall, pace and profile are you know, bar none. You can honestly, you know, a hinge and a spotlight is. I have one JDM minnow that I also throw a little bit, but it's kind of a niche deal. I'll take it a step further. Drew's exactly right on the pace, you know, as far as if they're not, you know, catching up to it, it's too fast. If they're getting right on it and eventually just kind of drifting off, it's usually not fast enough. As far as profile, what I will do is I will, depending on the body of water, obviously if it's got big gizzards or some kind of big forage, I'll generally start bigger and go small. But one thing that I've noticed is if you have a minnow that is smaller than what they want, a lot of times, like if this is the minnow, or excuse me, this is the fish, put it over here, my bait drops down and it gets right over the top of him, and it actually gets about 3 or 4 or 5 feet past him, and then he turns and starts to come. That's usually too small of a minnow. Like either he didn't see it, and another thing I'll preface, you need to make sure your cast is lined up. Like when I do that, I know that I am directly over the top of him. He chose or she chose to wait until after it got past him to come. Oftentimes that's a profile thing. It's not most of the time pace isn't really going to change that because I've even seen it when they let it go 7 or 8 feet past them, and they'll still come up there and eat it. But it's a bigger minnow oftentimes is a better case. You know, it's not even obviously dirty water. Generally, I'll use a bigger minnow just because it's, you know, a bigger profile. It's going to be more visible. But even in clean water, like Pickwick is one, they are so bad about letting even a 5-inch minnow go by. They might let it go by 10 feet. They're curious enough to turn around and come over there, but they almost never bite it. You throw a 7 and they won't let it get to them. They'll turn and start swimming at it when it's, you know, before it ever gets to them. So
That's interesting. So a lot of times you think they're maybe not seeing it.
Well, again, that's only if my minnow is directly over them. It comes across them. As soon as it gets directly above them is when they should, or even just before it gets to them, is usually when you're going to see them light up. They'll turn and start coming at it. But again, profile, that's what tells me profile more than anything is if we let that bait get past us before we come at it.
Okay.
So if we were to list off minnows, we're not talking head size here, minnows, profile, size, color, action, how would, etc. What would you rate as top 3 qualities of a minnow?
Obviously the rolling action.
Number 1.
Yep, the rolling, and when I say that, I want it in. And again, this is where Drew and I differ a little bit. Like for bottom-oriented fish, cover-related fish, I like a slow, consistent roll. Like it's this antagonizing. I am on my last leg here. I'm just
a tempo roll.
Correct.
A tempo roll. You get like, if you need to bring a ticker and set it on your front deck, by all means do it. But you gotta get that rhythm.
Right.
That's a rhythm roll.
Yep. Exactly.
So number 2.
Castability.
What's that?
Castability.
Of the minnow.
Okay.
To me. And when I say castability, like I'm honestly focusing more on your smaller minnows. So I've only got to throw Drew's one time. I just actually grabbed like a chewed up one in the bottom of his boat last fall and took it home with me and threw it a little bit.
Threw you a bone.
But it's the smaller minnows. So what I'm seeing, and again, this is the cool thing where it's really situational. Last week at Guntersville, Drew was able to really trigger those fish by keeping that minnow, basically pendulum that minnow down to them and start the vertical ascent very close to the boat. Those fish were really related to bait. They weren't super close to the surface, and they were in somewhat cool water, which helped that situation. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, sorry, another phone call. But a lot of times, especially on really clear bodies of water, look, we're by no means the only people throwing a minnow these days. They are seeing it more than they're probably seeing any other bait, without question. And I'm starting to see distance from the boat make a big difference. And that's why I say castability. Okay. I want to be able to be extremely accurate at 95 to 110 feet. Like as good as I can get it there, even in a crosswind or, whatever it may be, I need to be able to get that minnow precisely where I'm aiming very quickly, oftentimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's like the difference between throwing a rogue and a scope stick.
Correct.
It's like, good luck with a rogue. I mean, it's like throwing a biscuit sometimes. But
so top 1 and 2 have nothing to do with color.
Color's honestly, and again, I mean, there are times and places. Look, it's bass fishing. There's exceptions to anything, but color to me is the least important. I will say the only, as far as color, the only really important factor to me is that the bait needs to be two-tone, meaning it needs to be 2 colors. The back of the bait needs to be one color, preferably, but not always a darker color. And the bottom, a brighter, more white, translucent-y. Exactly.
Yep. Is that for the roll? I mean, obviously that's what a bait fish looks like, but
I think it gives it it almost like exaggerates that rolling effect, that shimmering
like
effect.
Bait.
Yeah, and honestly, kind of like a willow leaf, like a spinnerbait blade.
Gotcha.
You're getting that flash. I don't know if y'all have ever thrown like old school. I used to throw. I can't remember who makes it, or who made it, but one side was white and one side was chartreuse on the blade. You could cast that thing as far as you wanted to across Kentucky Lake, and you could see that flash coming all the way back. So it's just, again, whereas if that was the same tone of color, it wouldn't exaggerate it or show it in that same manner.
So you want like a green pumpkin pearl, just random, but you want a dark, light color. But it goes back to just as simple as if you guys call this old school jig fishing, you can catch them on a black and blue, and you can catch them on a brown jig everywhere you go in the country. One of them's just going to catch them a little bit better than the other one.
And here's the thing with contrast that matters with bait selection. And this is why I think contrast matters so much. Contrast creates the illusion of movement, meaning your bait is moving through water just as fast as it is if there's no contrast, but at a slower speed. Contrast exaggerates the appearance of movement, meaning that fish thinks that is moving in a more aggressive manner than it actually is, causing them, I think, to close distance faster, because they have the idea that it is moving away or moving. Let's say I throw my minnow out there and I'm shaking it at this pace and then I get it quick. That does not mean I'm fishing it any further across distance. But when that thing starts flashing and rolling faster, I'm creating the illusion that bait's speeding up, even if it isn't. And I'm creating a situation where the bass assumes that the bait is getting away from it, when in actuality, it's not moving any faster. It's just rolling quicker. Because in the water, a bait fish, when that bait fish, the faster the bait fish flashes, the faster it moves through the water. With a minnow, that's not true. But with a real bait fish, the more flash they see, the more that tail's kicking, and the more their tail's kicking, physics says the faster they're moving through the water. And so as that bait increases in contrast, as it increases in flash, it's creating that illusion that it is speeding up even when it isn't. And I think that's really important with other baits, like a spy bait, like a swim bait, to use your rod angle to try and create the illusion of movement over distance. It's all about creating the illusion of movement over distance. And that's what contrast is all about, in my opinion.
Yes, you're taking advantage of that predator-prey relationship.
Yeah. And one thing, so right here, we've got 4 1/4 spotlight and our compact hinge right here, the tall one. So the thing, we were talking about things that we think matter. In my hierarchy, I'm going like profile, posture, action. And posture action, I think, is really probably kind of in the same category, but it's different. So right here, we've got the spotlight, right? Okay. I'll put my hand behind it, see if that helps anything. It probably doesn't. But, okay, it's got a hollow core in it, which allows this bait to, when I'm fishing it at very slow speeds, to sit flat in the water. Bait fish don't sag. They don't droop. If the back end of your bait falls, the slower you fish it, they're going to lose interest in a very dramatic way. I saw that at Kentucky Lake this year. I had a certain minnow that I was throwing there that was a 6-inch minnow. I had a floating version and a sinking version. In the sinking version, my bite percentage was less than 20%. The floating version, my bite percentage was almost 75. Dramatic difference. Same profile, same color. One was sinking, one was floating, and that was the difference. And right here, so you can get that one of two ways. You can get it with a hollow core that just makes it where, there's a pocket that helps use the water to keep the bait flat. And with this hinge, you got those ridges there. In that tall body profile with the shorter tail portion, the body profile supports that horizontal posture rather than using buoyancy to do it. The actual physics of the body shape do it. And so with this bait, it stays flat because of the body shape and obviously our little ledge running down both sides of the bait.
Right,
but keeping the bait flat is really important. So if it's not hollow, if it doesn't have an air pocket that allows the water to stabilize it, it's got to have body physics like this hinge does with the little ledges and a good steep, deep belly to support the vertical stance of that bait and keeping it from sagging in the back. I think that's one part that doesn't get emphasized enough. Obviously, profile matters a ton, how big your bait is and what it looks like in the water. Action matters a ton because that's what creates the illusion of movement and motion over distance. But I think the most overlooked part of like profile, posture, action is because if it doesn't stay flat, every single time it starts to sag, you're creating doubt in that fish's mind that thing's real.
Definitely. Jake, there was a question on here where somebody was talking about fishing minnows in watercolor. Where do you draw the line as far as, how stained or how muddy the water is and, fishing a minnow? Or is there?
That's I don't mean to make this sound the way that it's going to, but just when the water gets muddy, bass don't quit eating shad. Their their range, strike zone, so to speak, kind of closes down. But oftentimes, if they're still feeding on shad, we can still make them bite a minnow. Oftentimes, what you have to do is traditionally, and I say traditionally, always, you want to keep your minnow as far above
Way too
and
fast
away
for any of us
from
to
the
see.
fish. You want to keep your bait as far away as you possibly can, but yet just close enough they can see it. That's always my move, pretty well no matter what. If we've got 20 foot of visibility, the bass can see it 20 feet. I want to keep my bait 18 to 21 feet away from them. I'm just throwing out some random numbers. If we've got 6 inches of visibility, I'm going to keep that bait like 4 to 8 inches above it. And that's all just going back to Drew in the first, call it 3 to 5 that you throw at. I am never, until I get one to bite, I'm never doing the same thing twice. And that's whether we're throwing a minnow, a jerk bait, it doesn't matter. Honestly, even if I'm not scoping, I'm constantly changing cadence or retrieves until I get a bite. That's what we've always done forever and ever. Scope obviously allows us to better understand more quickly what we did wrong. When we don't have it, you're never told you messed that up. We don't ever know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very important. The very first couple that you're going to throw at, don't keep it at the same pace, the same distance above him. Do something different until you'll immediately see the reaction that you're looking for when you find whatever that is. And we've thrown around a ton of circumstances or situations, but we're kind of making it sound more complicated. I say that these fish they're getting a lot more educated to it. Like, it's not as easy as what it was even last spring, really. I mean, they have really wised up to this. So it is there are some finite little things you can do that will certainly speed this process up. But one thing that I really feel like Drew and I, again, regardless, and we're certainly not the only ones by any means, but what we're probably a little more proficient than most at is seeing, recognizing, and understanding why that bass didn't bite to put it into the next one that we find to get that one.
Right.
And it's just this evolution of every single thing that I see, whether it's good or bad, I'm taking that into consideration for the next decision that I'm going to make. And that's how that's how you see all these anglers. Again, that can be without scope. Drew and I are just really good at utilizing it with scope, but it's all fishing, even outside of bass fishing. Like, we're going to make mistakes or the wrong decisions throughout a fishing day, but it's who makes the right decision first based on whatever information they have in front of them.
Hey, is that a mail tub from the United States Postal Service behind you?
It is.
Oh.
I didn't know that. I'm staying at a buddy's house.
Okay.
So
might want to let him know that there is a disclosure from the United States federal government on there about having one of those.
He doesn't have it. You don't see it.
It's all right. I won't tell the postmaster.
All of a sudden, he's at a buddy's house.
You got serious, man. It got really serious all of a sudden. Yeah, it's my buddy's. Yeah, cannot confirm or deny that that's mine.
No comment. Actually,
no comment.
I'm out. If anybody is interested in knowing, I have migrated south to Texas here.
Good for
during
you.
the snow ice apocalypse. I am snooping around down here in Texas.
Yeah.
So.
So what you're saying, back to the water clarity in the minnow, you better be pretty dialed in with the front looker and be able to cast, very accurately. The dirtier the water, the more critical the cast is.
Yeah, the more
as far as closeness to the fish,
Correct. Again, Probably the biggest mistake that I see an average angler or a beginner, and this is again not just with a minnow, but any bait with forward facing, is they want to literally put the bait right here in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
No prey of any kind swims straight up to a predator and says, "Eat me." It's completely unnatural to them, and you can tell their reaction. It's like, whoa, they'll spin around, and usually, depending on water clarity, they'll swim like 3 to 5 feet away from your bait, turn around and get a good look where they're like back. They're not going to get, attacked, or who knows what's going to happen. But you can tell.
Because those old bass, I got to put them glasses on it.
That's right. You can tell when you get too close to one, you really mess them up. Like I would rather stay, and I tend to stay too far away from him. You can always make a second cast at a fish most of the time. You've got time. So I always tend to stay as far away as I can. If I don't get a reaction, I'll get it a little closer, till finally she starts the whole game.
Well, okay. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight, and this is kind of a good segue into that, is not really a segue, just to piggyback on what you're saying, is some of the things that you see anglers that are new with forward-facing sonar do that they could improve on. What are a couple things that you see guys doing that you're like, there's room for improvement based off what you guys have learned over the years with it?
Yeah. So first and foremost, getting the bait too close, like we just said. And when I mean that, I'm meaning the bait to the fish. But on the other side of that is you personally, your boat, impeding their little safety zone, and each fish, but really more the body of water, will have its own range of like comfort zone and right. How close you can get to them. But we're all bad about getting up on top of them, and the more pressure that they get, the more that seems to really mess things up. They're a lot more particular about that than like at Conroe last year, where they had never been. I'm fairly certain they'd never been minnowed. I ran over a couple of them with my trolling motor. Now, I don't mean like prop hit them in the back, but literally they couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 feet, and you'd see them, they'd spook down to about 5 or 8 feet deep, swim out 20 or 30 feet away from the boat, and come right back up to the surface, and I could throw over there and catch it. Like, wow, that doesn't happen in most places these days.
And I will piggyback on that concept and say this. People are letting their boat get too close to them, and they have a crippling miss long mindset. Crippling. 25 feet is a lot closer than you think it is. When that fish is 25 feet from your boat, stop having the miss long mindset of, if I throw it 75, I won't miss him short. And then you have to reel for however long, and he's come 8 feet closer. Now he's 17 feet from the boat, and your bait's probably still 4 feet behind him. He's focused on the boat. He ain't turning around to look at your bait, and your bait is there too late. The cardinal sin of minnowing, in my opinion, is letting a fish get to the boat without having to pass your bait to get there. Mm-hmm. Stop with the endless miss long mindset. Yep. Miss long, 5 feet long, not 40.
Right.
I say not 40, not 15. Miss long by 5 maybe. But when a fish is sub 40 and your boat is going in the same direction that fish is, if he's sub 40, I am in, like, this is now, I'm playing prevent defense. Okay. I am trying to keep that fish from getting to the boat without ever seeing a bait. Because if he gets the boat without seeing a bait first, I have 0% chance of catching him. If he's locked in on my trolling motor. And guess what? If he's locked in on my trolling motor 10 feet away and I pitch it and I catch him, I would have caught him just plunking it on his head anyways. So I am in full on get a bait in front of him before he actually gets locked in on the boat. And if he's sub 40 and you're moving towards him, that's his final destination. That's where that fish will end up. He won't just turn around and just kind of ease off. He will come straight at you before he does anything else. The miss long mindset is the most crippling mindset if you want to get good at hitting everything. If you want to leave no stone unturned, and we're not trying to prepare to be good next week. We're trying to prepare to be the best we can possibly be 6 months, a year from now. And if you're trying to get really, really proficient, that crippling, I'm going to miss everything long mindset just makes you choosing to be 20% less efficient as your safety blanket. But you're choosing to be 20% less, your ceiling is going to be 80% efficient because you're wasting 25% of that cast every single time you make a cast.
Well,
try to get precise.
I had that same mindset. I've learned because you throw it past them. You not even just you're not fast enough. They just swam away.
They swim. Your boat drifts.
Yeah,
there's so many moving parts of this.
Right.
And
so, would you rather cast short than cast long?
Never
short.
Sub 40. I would rather cast short than cast long. Meaning
you rather cast 3 foot short than 20 foot long.
Yes. If we're sub 40, okay. I would rather be 10 foot short than 10 foot long.
Okay.
If we're sub 40.
Drew just gave a big nugget out right there, and I wasn't going to do it, but since you threw it out there, if you are inside of 40, if that bass is inside of 40, there's about a 90% chance he already knows you're there, and he's turned around looking at you. So when you throw it behind him, it's coming at his tail first. Now, you're staying over the top of him, but just like if you crept up behind me and, like, I know something or someone is behind me, but I'm freaked out. I don't like somebody being behind me. It's the same concept. Like, not saying that you can't catch that fish if it comes over his tail and, first. But if you can, inside of 40, he's looking at you. If you can pitch it 3 to 5 feet in front of him without making some big giant splash, you catch him almost every time.
The ideal cast in this scenario is missing him by 4 to 5 feet, left or right. That's the ideal cast, because then his first movement is not 180. He's not spinning all the way around, but his first movement, when he first sees your bait, he turns away from the boat being in his field of vision. He's now turning his focus away from the boat. And bass, although they can be very educated, a lot of it is about just overcoming that initial hesitation. If you can, that first moment that fish engages with your bait, if you can get him committed, then you can catch him at your trolling motor. But you got to convince him in that first look. And a lot of that's about keeping your boat out of their field of vision.
Yeah, that is some juice, man. That makes.
I hope everybody's listening, because that was like,
that makes complete sense.
Yeah. I will say with the whole left or right deal, water clarity plays a big factor in that. The less that they can visually see, the more I've got to be right on top of him. But a lot of places where they're coming at the boat from 40, 50 feet away, there's quite a bit of clarity. There's plenty of clarity for them to see your minnow a couple feet left or right.
So to back up and get away from the juice here, not that I want to take everybody away from juice, but outside of 40, just past them.
Correct.
Not 10 foot past them, 3 foot past them, 2 foot past them.
I mean, if you're really efficient, like I have seen it, it also depends on how shallow he is. So the shallower, the closer to the surface, the further, especially if I'm throwing a bigger minnow, that you can't throw it 90 and make it land really soft.
Right.
The shallower he's sitting, the further I'm going to cast past. But the one thing to kind of go a step further with that is, like, I know, because I'm looking at him on forward, I know where he is and I know where my bait is. One tendency that I see a lot of people is they'll cast their bait 15 feet past the fish and just immediately start the slow minnow cadence, which you're not really covering a lot of water very quickly that way. There's no reason. If something was going to bite it back there, you'd see him. So I will throw, if he's really shallow, sometimes I will throw 10, 15 feet past him. But I'm making like 4 or 5. I mean, as fast as I can wind it to get it to him and start. Like, I may hit 15 feet past, but within 2 seconds, I'm right there at him and I'm making the retrieve.
And the only reason you're throwing past him is to not spook that fish that's in that 10 foot or less water column, so you're not spooking laying on his head.
Where I'm really concerned with the bait splashing and bothering or seeing a negative reaction from the fish is really in less than 5, like 5 or less, most of the time. You get in some extremely clear, extremely pressured, like where we're going here in a couple weeks, and it gets a little weird. But overall, in generality, 5 feet or less is where I'm really concerned with that splash bothering them.
It's good stuff. That's a lot to think about. Yeah, I'm still hung up on that 5 foot with the boat going towards the fish. That's like such a common. It makes total sense. It's like why didn't I think about that? It makes
when you said the fish is already looking at you, that just completely changed my mindset.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like super, super simple, but that one comment.
Yeah,
what's I saw the little smoke. Drew, we need to stop talking about this, or Drew's gonna just like.
Yeah, he's going head down here. I know what that look is. It's what's interesting is how aware a lot of these fish are. So, you chasing, and anybody listening, I'm sure you've seen this as well, but it's very rare that you see a fish floating, and oftentimes they're not just sitting stationary, they're swimming around. But very rarely do you ever come across a floater that's swimming away from you. Like when you think about it, when you pound around and you see one, he's almost always coming at the boat. It's just, I think they're just aware, which we're running. Obviously, we are not stealthy. I know what Drew's doing and me as well. Like we are anything but being stealthy out there. Moving the trolling motor. Exactly. We're making a bunch of racket. So
that's a big difference right there between what you guys are doing and what the average angler is doing. After that ABFA, Drew, that high school bass fishing teams conference up there, we ate dinner with Patrick Walters and Easton Fothergill, and we were having some of the same kind of conversations. And
7 was the lowest on their trolling
motor.
Yeah,
I was like, they were making fun of me for putting around with my trolling motor on 3 and 4. They're like, what? 3? And I'm like, what?
The last time I put
7
my
minimal.
motor
I'm
on,
like, dude.
He's like, can your boat even move at 3?
The last time I put my trolling motor on 3, I hit the button. I'm like, man, I know I'm not out of juice. Like, wait a minute, like, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I've never ever run mine really. 8 to 10.
But you guys got brakes too. That makes a big difference.
It does.
That makes a big difference. 7 with brakes is.
Hey, you made fun of me with my brake on my John boat, but that brake is game changer.
Yeah.
It has, like, there have been a couple technological advances, obviously outside of forward facing, that has truly changed my approach and how I go about fishing. And those brakes are absolutely at the top of that list. Like, I'm not going to say we couldn't do what we're doing, but we would in no way, shape, or form be able to do it with the efficiency rate. If you're going that fast without them, you are inevitably going to mess a few of them up. Like you're not going to see them in time, or the wind's going to be at your back, and it's inevitable. You see enough of them during the course of a day, even with brakes, you're still able to do it a handful of times. But in our game, with every fish counts, every single bite matters. Like it's unbelievable. You think, a traditional 5-fish deal, you lose a 2 1/4, who cares? Think about it. At the end of the day, but with our format, obviously it all adds up. Like, so much money is won and lost by 3 to 5 pounds in our deal, whether it be actually winning the event or just making a check.
Do they float on all lakes? Question from Jojo. What's up, Jojo?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, in terms of practical fishing approach, do they float in a practical and predictable manner on all lakes? No. Do they float on all lakes at some point in the year? Yes, there is a population of bass floating. But trash fish, current, cover, there's so many factors, water clarity, that totally changes how predictable that float is going to be. Because to predict a float, you've got to have a water clarity situation, a cover situation, a contour situation, or a forage situation. that forces them to be in a certain place. Because if we're, you know, for example, I've weighed fish at Eufaula, Oklahoma. I've weighed fish at you know, in certain rivers, like the James, that float, but you don't know when it's going to happen. You just look over and there's one there. And it's really, there's some places that it's unpredictable, but it still happens. So my answer, yes, they float. Is it predictable, patternable, and profitable on all places? No.
I concur.
So I know you guys don't like old school fish a lot, but you ever use your brakes when you're not scoping?
100%.
Absolutely.
They've totally changed. They've totally changed fishing in the wind.
Absolutely.
Like, totally changed fishing in the wind. The wind is big wind is numero bad bass fishing factor for your efficiency. Big wind kills you more than anything else in terms of efficiency. And being able to keep the back of your boat square in big wind totally changes everything, even when we don't have scope.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, like, I know this sounds stupid, but I've flipping brush, shallow, get hung up, piece up to it, get out, back out, flip right back in there, and catch a fish.
Yep.
Because now you're not in and out, blowing it all out. Like,
yeah. Will, you've asked this question a couple times, talking about how they make the most out of the forward-facing sonar, non-forward-facing sonar time period. We covered that a little bit into the stream. So if you go back and listen to that, they gave a really detailed explanation of all that. And then Daniel's got a question. He says, how important is keeping your boat moving forward on a cast when you look in on a fish?
So I traditionally, I prefer my boat to be stationary. I really don't want the distance is oftentimes depends on technique. Obviously, a bottom bait is going to be different than a horizontally moving bait. Obviously, it's always going to be coming back to me, therefore the boat. And so I traditionally am more leery, or I would prefer the boat to not be moving towards the fish in either, although it's way more important on your horizontally moving baits. When they're chasing that bait and it's coming back to the boat, you don't want the two coming together. That time window really shrinks down. Now, obviously, if they'll eat the Nicorama, you can get away with a lot more. Like, I can pitch it past him, get him to turn and start looking and following the bait away from the boat. And at that point, his sole focus is angled down, chasing my worm. He's not paying a bit of attention to what's happening. My boat could almost come over the top of him, you know, before I would really mess him up at that point. So really, I guess in short, it depends on the technique, or the presentation rather.
We spent an hour and a half talking about a minnow. I'm really curious about this worm deal, because I still have yet to master that part of what y'all are doing.
Oh, the Nico rig. Yeah.
My God. Like, I see y'all doing it, and I'm just jealous because I haven't figured this crap out yet.
Dude, I've had some good days on it, like some really good days on it. And so here's my downfall, and JB knows this. You guys probably can figure this out too. But as a content creator with a YouTube channel, I'm always going out there trying to catch fish in different ways. You know, I'm promoting different baits. I'm experimenting around with different baits. So I'll go out and catch them on one bait, and then I have to kind of leave it alone just to create something different. And I like experimenting and catching them all different kinds of ways. It's fun to get some baits and go out there and play around with them. But there was a couple days where I was focused on doing, it was with the Nicorama worm, and I was focused on how to catch fish on that. And I fished it before, but that was the video. I was going out just focusing on that. And man, it was fun. It was a blast. I learned a lot about it just in that one day, but unfortunately, I'm not going to stay on that bite for like a month because I'm trying to incorporate other baits into my content creation. But yeah, that's a freaking blast, man. I love that little worm. It's a good one.
But the worm is the worm for a reason, and it's because there's never been a bait in bass fishing created that is so user friendly. Mm-hmm. You just got to get him to see it. If they are biting a worm and that fish sees it, it is hard to do it wrong. That fish will give you a lot of opportunities to bite. If they are locked in on a worm, that fish is begging you to do the right thing to make it bite, because as soon as you do, he's going to make that commitment.
You know, you talk about
That's
the
the beauty of
TVA
the
and
worm.
how it's your arch nemesis. The worm's kind of mine.
Yeah, man, it's that worm is it's powerful. And to be honest, is it let's break it down. Is it your arch nemesis because you don't enjoy throwing it, or because why do you
I
say
haven't
that?
got that reaction that you're alluding to, where a fish follows it down, not as often as I would like.
I got you.
That's
You
where
just need to
that's
throw
where
it more.
the and it's probably more of a confidence thing. I'll throw that minnow out there, or a jerk bait, or something that's in the water column, get a reaction out of that fish.
High
And it's
engagement rate baits.
Yeah, it's like, well, hell, I'll throw the worm out there, see if I can get the same engagement. It's not happening. And it may be the water depth that I'm fishing as well, too, chasing floaters versus going to fish around cover. So,
yeah, floaters are that's the one you can definitely catch them on a worm. Like, I'll even throw another one little nugget out. Like, you can swim that Nico Rama over them, just like you do a minnow, and catch them very, very well. But when they're not as bottom related or oriented, like, I'm not saying they have to be on the bottom, but if they're, say, more than like 5 feet from the bottom, on average, again, there are lakes and times exceptions to that, but where I've seen them, they'll chase it 30 feet to the bottom, and as soon as it touches bottom, they'll eat that worm. But oftentimes when they're more than, say, 5 feet from the bottom, the worm is generally not going to be the deal. It's they're feeding up at that point.
okay.
So it may, again, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's probably more of the particular fish, not that you can't catch them anywhere in that, particular body of water that you're at, but it's, instead of chasing those floaters and the ones out over the deepest basin of the lake, if you'll find you a shallower point that's got a piece of brush on it, or a rock or something like that, find something where a bass can relate to. That's where that worm and really all bottom related baits really
how
shine.
often does that worm expose fish that you can't see?
It's not a great bait for that. It happens, but it's not a great bait for that.
It's not one of those they're going to come meet halfway if you didn't see it.
The magic of the worm is in the fact that it doesn't look like anything they eat. It is so abnormal that it keeps a high focus rate, but it's not incredibly enticing. Meaning it's hard to call them from distance. A lot of times you got to go to them. But because of how abnormal it is, it's really easy to keep them kind of focused on it. But you've got to go to them. They don't tend to come to you very often. They're in very clean water. The situation I can think of where it does expose fish for me that I catch because of it is when we go to somewhere with very clean water where they're relating to some sort of bottom adjacent cover, meaning rock or like real short scrub brush. But generally you got to be on like a Highland Reservoir, Herring Lake for that to really play. Somewhere where there's a ton of fish, so even if you don't see them, you can assume they're there.
Drew could catch one on a Nico in the Walmart parking lot.
Promise you.
I'll tell you,
That's dialed, man. Dialed.
I don't know about that, but I definitely can say that, like, if it would not be a dilemma for me if you told me I could have one bait forever. I wouldn't have a single qualm with my decision there. I might finish dang near dead last in the first tournament of the year, but when it's bitter cold, but I promise you it doesn't matter what we do the rest of the year, I'll be competitive from there.
I have caught one off a shopping cart in the Ohio River before. And
That's
the same day I caught one off a refrigerator and I caught one off of a stove. We had an appliance pattern going. It was phenomenal. We just ran out of boat docks and appliances.
Were they
Only on the Ohio.
Did they have to be chrome, or were they like the finished?
These were white. I think one was white and then one was like that 70s retro, like
nobody throws away a chrome refrigerator. It's always the white ones.
It was an overlooked current break. That's what it was. Just everybody just blew right past it. It was an obvious current break. That was a fun day.
That's Ohio River stuff there.
It is, man.
I
That
mean,
place
when you
is
flip
downhill.
a dead cow in the middle of the river, you know you're.
I saw a dead
Absolutely.
cow. Yeah, I've fished off
Absolutely.
a dead cow before for sure. Not off, but I've flipped a dead cow before. True story. That was on Devil's
Oh.
Kitchen.
I saw one floating down Kentucky Lake last year.
Ugh.
That's the one you don't want to hit with the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Lots of
JB.
weird
That was
stuff we don't necessarily need to talk about here floating down Kentucky Lake. I found some unusual objects. We'll leave it at that.
yeah. Time on
I've
the wall.
caught some unusual
PG.
objects on Kentucky Lake. See, back old school, before we had all that, when you're throwing a trap across 3-foot gravel bars, you catch all kinds of stuff. You also lose all kinds of damn traps too. But
You got that right.
Hey, couple more things here we'll get into, and then we'll shut her down. So I know last time you guys were on here as a duo, we were kind of breaking down some of the myths that you guys have revealed using LiveScope, just some of the things that we just assumed were true. Is there something that comes to mind that let's just say everybody reads Bassmaster magazine or whatever magazine it is. There's things that we just took them as truth. Are there things that you've been able to debunk using forward-facing sonar that everybody assumed were, legitimate truths? I know last time, Drew, you said something that was really interesting when I addressed when I posed this question, and it was about the creek channels and how generation after generation after generation. Let's go back to before that was impounded, before that lake was impounded, there was a creek that ran through a certain valley. There were native species that lived in that creek. And when that was impounded, those genetics were still in that body of water and they were passed down. And you thought that could possibly play into why those fish still use that creek channel, because at one time that was their only way of moving around that said body of water. So I thought that was pretty cool. I kind of went back and re-listened to that, and it kind of makes sense.
I think one thing that comes to mind when I think of things that very popular concepts that were thrown around for a long time that I would say at least need redefined or revisited: reaction bite. You cannot sneak up on a bass. He knows you're coming. Maybe you give him a very short window of time to make that decision, and he makes a very gut snap reaction because of how fast your bait's moving, how unpredictably it's moving, that he knows that if he's going to do it, now's the time. But watch, I'll throw a chatterbait out there and watch it on scope, and you'll snatch it through grass, and you will watch them come from the grass, chase it out, and that snatch that you thought was you popping that chatterbait out, and it's moving this far, and he's sitting in the grass, he just opens his mouth. Dude, that sucker's got to chase it down. You snatch it 8 feet, and he goes and eats it. Reaction bite, in my opinion, is not, oh, I spooked the bass with my bait, and he just kind of mouthed it. You just forced that fish into a situation where he had to make a gut reaction right then. But it's not necessarily that you just popped your bait in front of his nose and because, oh, there's a bait there, he just opens his mouth. He still has to make the decision to pursue it and eat it. You've just forced him to do it in a very small window of distance or time.
I don't know if it was you two that were talking about this, but it was a same concept, flipping that beaver next to a stump or a laydown, and they use that as a shield, so that bait can't get away, that forage can't get away. They're not actually sitting on that stump; they're sitting off of it.
They're pinning it against the cover.
They're pinning it up against that. That was same concept, but they're sitting here, swimming, standing, as Dion Hibden would say, standing over here, and the stump or the structure's over here, and your bait just happened to get between those two, and they pinned it against the.
One of the coolest bites I've had watching was I was fishing a swim jig deeper in about 10 foot of water, and there was a brush pile, and I saw a bass sitting on one side of the brush pile, so I cast it out past him, let it fall to the bottom, and I was just kind of slower on the swim jig. I do that a lot. I fish a swim jig out deeper than a lot of people do. But anyway, this bass, it was hilarious. and you know, you guys that don't have forward facing sonar, this is one of the coolest things about forward facing sonar is you're actually able to see a fish doing fish things in their environment. And sometimes I laugh. I like giggle like a little 4-year-old up on the deck of the boat when I see a fish do something that was hilarious. I was like, you know, it's like I have that moment where I know exactly what it's doing. It was just funny to me in my human mind. But this fish was sitting there next to this brush pile. I'm reeling my swim jig by him, and he like starts sneaking. At first I thought he was maybe, it didn't seem like he was scared of the bait, but it just felt like he was up to something. Like he was just kind of like easing over here to the side and kind of hiding behind a bush, you know, just kind of ambush. But he swam about 4 or 5 feet and kind of set up on this other section of the brush pile. And my swim jig went by, and he didn't just swim like straight away or straight towards. He actually swam a little bit out of the way, you know, kind of where I had to turn my trolling motor just slightly to keep up with him. But he swam to the side of that brush pile and set up, and my swim jig swimming through there. And I just felt like he was watching it. And as soon as it got like about halfway away from him, he swam around the side of the brush pile, and then he snuck up in there and he slammed it. But to me, it was like, he was like, oh, there's something coming. I'm going to sneak back over here in this corner and just chill for a minute. And as soon as that minnow or that whatever he thought it was, the bluegill, came by there, and it was, you know, basically he felt like this was his spot to like come out there and ambush. He ambushed it. But that's the kind of stuff you see with forward facing sonar, and it makes me giggle. It's hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. So predator prey, the predator's instinct, his whole existence revolves around consumption and the amount of energy that it took to consume that. So they're never going to, just like me, like I'm not going to jog 10 miles up the road to eat a ham sandwich when I've got one in the refrigerator over here. Like it's obviously much more serious, than that. But it's like to your, point about pinning that bait to the stump. Any time that you can create a situation or a circumstance where that, in our case, that bass, but really it's any predator, even like 4-legged dry land animals, anytime that they've got their prey in a position where they feel like it's cornered, you'll get a totally different demeanor out of them. West Coast big bait, glide guys, oftentimes will sit on the bank in their boat, will sit on the bank and cast out deep, because what they're going to do is they're going to draw that fish up, might have come from 20 or 30 feet deep, but when he actually eats it is once he gets it up there in 2 to 5 feet of water where he knows that prey can't get away. There's not very many options. But one misconception or something that I have learned with forward facing is just how much we actually move our baits. Like this, a snap of the rod moves the bait 2 to even sometimes 5 times further than what I anticipated. Like if your rod moves 1 foot, oftentimes that bait's moving 2 or 3 feet in the water. It's really interesting. Obviously, depends on the bait, the technique, that sort of thing. But like the one where I really noticed it was ripping a big spoon a couple years ago offshore, which I've done forever on Kentucky Lake. But I'd pan it up there and look, and I'd stroke that spoon thing, and I'm like doing it. I'm basically setting the hook every time, thinking I'm only getting my spoon, 2 to 3 feet off the bottom. In reality, you pan scope over there, it's almost 4% out of the water. Like I'm getting it 8, 10, 12 feet off the bottom with one sweep of the rod. So that is something that I'm not going to say that it like changed how I fished, but it was definitely something that it was a big misconception. And it has helped in ways, but just something cool that I didn't really see coming.
Yeah, I think how fast a bass will move in cold water was always a misconception to me.
Yep.
Man, I got some LiveScope footage of this bass. The water's 40 degrees. I'm jerking a scope stick, and this fish comes flying out of nowhere and smashes that jerkbait. I mean, the water clarity, this was on Egypt. The water clarity was like 6 or 7 foot, but that fish traveled like 20 feet probably, you know, to smash that bait. It was pretty cool, man.
We have kids and guys that have kids in the live stream tonight, so
I don't know about all that. I'm an old soul trapped in a young man's body. I don't know what y'all are doing right now, but
he said 6
Jake,
or 7 feet.
Okay, with Aiden Carson, there's no way you don't know what we're doing. Come on.
No, I mean,
How old are you, boys, Jake?
Yes, I have seen it, but I don't know what it's like. That 6'7" stuff. Like what?
Nobody
what are we
knows
even
what it
doing?
means.
You don't have to know what it means.
Gets people going.
I was at a high school baseball practice the other night, and I just overheard a conversation. And somebody's like, "What time are you going to get there?" And he didn't answer. He just goes, and everybody's like, "Okay."
I already forgot about that. That's how fast things move. I already forgot about that. So,
also to piggyback back on Jake's point with how much you move your bait, to think about this in a very math oriented standpoint. Okay, you got a triangle, right? And the triangle is, essentially the x-axis is my rod when I'm pointing at my bait. The y-axis is my rod just straight up in the air, right? There's a 90-degree angle being created by that. This is rod pointing forward. This is rod in the air. But the distance between the end of this plane and the end of this one is much further than either plane on its own, meaning you might be holding a 7-foot rod, whatever, but the distance between your rod tip when it's straight out and when it's straight up is much further than 7 feet, because that is the longest plane of that triangle. So when I take my bait and I point it and I get it gommed up in the grass and I turn sideways, meaning it doesn't have to be from straight forward to straight up. It can be from straight forward to a 90-degree turn to the right. That's the same distance. And I pull it all the way to my right with my line tight to clear my bait. That is much further than the length of your rod. And if your rod's 7 feet long, let's say you have direct pressure the entire time and you make that movement. I mean, yeah, it's not 7 feet from the pivot point, which is at your hand.
Yeah.
But, for the illustration, I mean, that might be 8 feet of movement, 9 feet of movement just by me doing this. My hand, where I perceive the movement happening, is moving 1.5 feet. But the rod tip, which is directly affecting that bait's movement, is moving. I mean, it's displacing by 8 or 9 feet. Like, if it's, when we might not perceive it as much because the movement is our hand is moving and that is what's influencing it. But that lever that is the rod is drastically changing where that bait is in the water over that distance, because of the fact that that's the long plane between point A and point B is just that the change in 90 degrees. But it's insane how much you move your bait when you think about it from your hands aren't moving the bait. The rod tip is moving the bait. You got to iron that into your head. Is like your hand is influencing the rod, but the rod's doing it. And the influence you put on the rod with your hand is far, far more emphasized by the rod.
Sure, that makes total sense. And then you could tie in braid and fluorocarbon with the amount of stretch and
I mean,
action.
That was one thing we talked about at that high school seminar, was just like the difference between your types of line. I mean, it's amazing how much stretch matters at distance.
And that is why I'm friends with Drew Gill. Because when I got a question about something, I don't even contemplate it. I just call my man up. Last year, oh gosh, what tournament was this? Dude, he killed me with this. I don't even know if I told Drew this or not. But I don't know that he even wants me to. But we're talking, and I think it was at Potomac. I think I was catching him on a buzzbait. And I just happened to mention, I'm like, hey man, if you're down a bare bank, just need to cover some water, like you throw a buzz bait. And he said, oh, cool. Okay. We got off the phone. We talked 4 or 5 hours later. And I think he'd been catching them on a little trap or a chatterbait or something. And we called back just to, shoot the bull and pass time. And I said, well, what do you think about that buzz bait? He said, well, so I've gotten a few bites. I wish I could remember exactly how he said this, but more or less he said, so I'm getting like 18% more bites on the buzz bait, but my land ratio is like 27% worse than my chatterbait. So I think I'm just going to stick with my chatterbait. And I'm like, wait a minute. Say that all over. And like literally went all back through it, this whole synopsis. And we got off the phone and I literally sat down. Again, it's like 16-hour days at the Potomac. It's 112 degrees.
Yeah.
I literally sat down and pull my calculator out. So I'm like, there's no way that he's pulling out all these. It was like exact to the number percentage.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. Like my mind it blows me away. Like I am super analytical, but not in a numerical way like that. Like it's so cool to listen to Drew. A lot of times we have the same thought processes and like we end up at the same place,
right?
But how we got there is two totally different routes, and it's cool to kind of.
I try to find a way to find very like detailed and specific ways to describe something, just to where I can make sure, like, because for me, like when I go fishing, it's really easy for me to do something just because I want to do it. And I got to let the numbers kind of talk me off a ledge sometimes. And, you know, when it comes to that, I mean, everybody in our field, everybody's not true. There's a handful of people that I don't think this is true about. Most of them, they're doing all of this subconsciously. They just don't illustrate it in a manner that makes it appear as though they are. Meaning for them, it's just fishing, but they're subconsciously making all these decisions just based on all of that same feedback. It's just that I try to, because of how much talking myself off a ledge in my own head I've had to do over the years, I've had to find a very numerical and very logical way to describe it to where I could take my feelings out of it when I'm talking to myself out there on the water. And so it makes it where that's just kind of how I describe it in general. And I guess over time I've discovered that a lot of other people don't talk to themselves in their own head the way that I talk to myself in mine. But it works for me. So as crazy as it sounds out loud, it's been very, very effective for me in the past.
It is, and obviously, Drew,
Yep.
you know, I'm only giving you a hard time, and I would not have even brought this up if I wasn't thoroughly impressed by it. Like literally every time you spit something out like that, now I don't even question it. I'm like, we'll trust that process. We'll roll with it. But again,
at the end of the day, you come to the same end goal, right? Like Drew said,
yes,
you're doing it.
Like
we just don't have to. Drew talks it out to himself to make sense. Not that we don't have to talk it out. It's just I'm thinking about
his
that.
Is just right. Like again, we're both. If we got the same amount of bites, if the exact same situation happened for both of us, exactly the same, I'm fairly confident almost every time we're going to end up, you know, at the same conclusion. It's just he articulates it in his mind in a much more numerical, like very specific, you know, way. And one thing that I have noticed, because I've kind of piggybacked off of Drew on that, is like when you get that specific and that precise with it, you're building subconsciously, you're building confidence in whatever that decision is. Like when you can put an abstract, like a numerical value to that, it makes it black and white way more so than anything else. And that's very hard to get or find in fishing. So much of what we do is kind of on a whim. We're you know, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and none of it is, you know, very rarely is it exact or you know, a finite thing that you can see and make a decision on. So when he's articulating those numbers, it's building confidence that in turn makes you fish better. Even if your percentage value or your land ratio is lower on that bait, if you've got more confidence in it, oftentimes you will fish it better. Therefore, you generate more bites and overcome the handful of losses that you have.
Yeah, I think Drew, what I like about the way you break things down in your analytical approach is because you create a control. There's a control, and then you're able to, you got like a center, you know, the center is not center is in like the Bible, but you have a center, and that is where your control is, and you're able to branch off of that and then do the stats in your head, and then come back, and eventually, if things go right, you've achieved the best possible tool for the scenario with the best hookup ratio, the best land to, hookup to land to catch ratio, that kind of thing. And I think it's made me think a lot about it, because I do some of the stuff in my head as well, but when you actually put some analytics to it and some stats to it, it's easier to comprehend. It's easier to, and then if you write it out, it even makes more sense. If you got a legal pad and you start doing all this stuff on a pad, you're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. That's why I should be fishing this. It takes a little more of the guessing out of it, maybe. It makes it more black and white, like you said, Jake. It's a great approach. I think guys out there in YouTube land, hashtag capital B, capital P, capital T. We're going to give away a $25 Baitworks gift card. So we'll let this run for just a little bit more. If you want to get involved in the drawaway, just put that in the comment section.
I think what Jake opened up the show with, talking about his TVA knowledge at this last BPT event, what Drew does, it takes a little bit of the emotion, it takes a little bit of the history out of your approach to fishing. We all have this notion when we go to the lake that this is what we're going to catch them on. Well, Drew's analyzed all of that, put it on in a numerical, analytical mindset that says, I don't care what history tells me. History is wrong in this situation. This is going to be my best percentage to put myself in a successful situation. Versus a lot of us, most of us, last March, we caught them, slow rolling a red square bill down pea gravel banks. Like, caught them pretty good doing that. Well, it's 10 degrees warmer this year than it was last year. You're just not focused on the details. You're focused on history and emotion, or to Gabe's point earlier too, what you want to catch them on. We go to the lake and we want to catch them on something, but it doesn't make sense from the analytical sense.
And really what it boils down to is like, let's take numbers, let's take process, let's take this all away, and let's define the problem. What is the problem? And our problem in decision making on the water is confidence is key, but how we define confidence is the problem. Is your confidence set in objective results? And for most of us, our confidence is based in some sort of result we've collected in the past. But is our confidence based in objective recent result? And is our confidence based in some sort of value that's kind of irrefutable? Like, how objective can we make our decision making? Because if I'm going to make a bad decision, I want to have to make myself be honest with myself and be like, listen, I know this is not a high percentage decision. I know this is high risk, and I want to make myself essentially, I'm just trying to put barriers in my way that box me in the right direction. Because if I have all these ideas that are bouncing around, I want to put a hurdle in my own way that makes me have to face the problem at hand and makes me have to be really honest with myself to make a decision. To where if I'm going to make one that is high risk, I know how high risk it is, and I know what I'm going to have to do to kind of batten the hatches and give myself the highest odds of success. Because what it boils down to is we all make decisions based on confidence, and it all comes down to, where is your confidence placed? Why do you feel the way you feel? And I have to make it super objective for myself, because if I'm not super objective and I don't have that moment where I'm honest with myself, my confidence oftentimes is going to be based in less than objective fact. It tends to be more malleable and more subjective. And the more subjective your confidence is, because everybody, I mean, I saw a video on Instagram today. Wheeler put out a reel or no, not Wheeler's, Bass Blasters, Kumar and Bass Blaster. And there was a statement that Wheeler had made about how, for anglers, confidence is everything. And everybody says that, but you have some guy that fishes his local tournaments, makes 2 checks a year fishing against 40 guys for $20 entry fee, and he says confidence is everything, and Jacob Wheeler says confidence is everything, and their results are totally different, but they're saying the same things, which means if the results of two individuals are totally different and they're saying the exact same thing, we're coming down to an issue of definition, and that is, what is confidence? For me, I like to define confidence as objective, definable, rational reasoning based in numbers and result. And that's, I mean, again, whether you define it that way or not, that's the same situation that Jake operates on. That's the same that Banks is operating on, that Wheeler's operating on. All your high performers, that is the concept that they run on. Is, yes, they're basing it in confidence, but their confidence is in objective result and what is my goal, and how is my confidence placed in the right process to get me to that goal. That's the problem here. I just use really objective means to try to get there, and numbers help you do that. But the biggest problem in bass fishing is you have to get confident in your decision, in every decision. It's very rare that you make a good decision without being confident in it in the first place, or at least partway through the process of making that decision. But how do you predict confidence effectively? That's what it comes down to. And how you go about it and how I go about it might be different. But it's, how do we what is confidence defined as? Because if confidence is our problem, if confidence is our core concept of like, okay, how do we define what is confidence, or what should confidence be? And for all of us, our, every top performer on our tour is going to find their own way to word it. But their purpose is the same. Their focal point is the same. They may come at it from a different angle, vocabulalistically, but their core concept of how they approach bass fishing, and it, from a macro standpoint, is going to be very, very similar.
Yep, that makes total sense.
Very well
and you
said.
build confidence. The more you have results that are positive, the more your confidence increases. And as you redefine your process, you just create more confidence. It's like a self-fulfilling deal. Yeah, that's good stuff. Let's draw this gift card here. Wiener, chicken dinner. All right. Gator 101. Get a hold of me.
Did I see Lawrence fishing on there? I wonder if that was my son or somebody. I thought I didn't enter. Maybe I misread that. It was going through there quick, but
oh, you never know.
Lawrence Fulton.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. I was gonna say, I got my boys on here.
Yeah, get a hold of me, Kegger 101, Facebook at Gabe Montgomery, or 10 Horse Monty 6 on Instagram, and I'll get you taken care of. Let's take this off of here. There we go. Cool, man. I guess we'll wrap this up, dude. We covered some good stuff tonight. That was a great conversation, man. It always is when you guys come on here. Definitely highly focused towards, minnow shaking, which is what I was hoping for, because there's a lot more to it than, cast, shake, set the hook, and drop them on the bubble scale. It's a little more detailed than that. It's a lot to learn. Yeah. And the whole reeling thing. Are you like, I mean, there's been like guys that set the hook, they fight the fish, or there's guys that just reel in and just keep it coming. And it's, I've been told that's a no-no because you're going to create line twists, but I see a lot more guys just keeping them coming. Any opinion on that? Is one better than the other?
I keep them coming. Any more movement than extra is just an opportunity for a mistake to be made. I want everything to be smooth, and like as uniform as possible, I guess, if that makes any sense. Every fight is going to be different, but the more that I move, the more I feel like I'm opening up an opportunity for him to get a leg up. All this, and look, it works. I'm not knocking anybody that does it, but like all that dropping and pulling back and dropping and pulling back, like one miscue on that, like one time your hand slips off the reel and now you've given him slack.
Yeah.
I don't know. And also, to me, anytime that I'm pulling that fish, like you envision in your mind, you're pulling him to the boat, but you're not. You're pulling him up. Like you're going to make him jump. The harder you pull, the more he's going to want to come up. I have to be very careful in saying this. I don't want somebody to take it too literal, because I never obviously ever give the fish slack. But if it's a big one, and particularly if it's like a treble hook bait, I've got more than one hook point in him, most likely. If I see my line starting to come to the surface, or I feel that he's coming up, I'll actually not drop my rod. But if I'm holding, steady pressure, I'll just slightly start easing up the pressure. And a lot of times when you do that, it's giving him room to turn her head. And they almost always, when available, they want to go back to the bottom. If you give them an opportunity to do that, they'll oftentimes do it. But pulling is the worst, in my opinion.
Except for that big old plug on Tennessee River when they hits the bottom, and then they eat it, and then they go straight to the top. That's the worst. And there is no stopping that one. I don't care who you are. I don't care how far you shove that rod in the water. You ain't stopping him at 92 feet from coming up to the top and taking that big old 2-ounce plug and go coop, 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 coop.
Yeah.
You're just hoping for the best. You're hoping
and break your heart, let me tell you.
Hook points in him.
and with spinning rods, if you're catching 3+ pounders on the regular, you should never start the hook from the hook set to the land. If your drag is set the same the whole time, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You should always have to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Because your goal at hook set is not the same goal as you have halfway through the fight.
Yep. That makes
the only exception that I will say to that is, like, it could be anywhere, but I learned this. Tennessee River smallmouth, when they are shallow, oftentimes a big one. Now, we're not talking a 3-pounder, but like a 4.5 to 6 pound smallmouth. A lot of times when they hit it, that first, you don't even really get to set the hook. They eat it and start peeling drag all at the same time. That Pro Circuit Invitational at that time 2 years ago, pretty well. I don't know that I lost that tournament. Like, I don't think if I land those two, I win, but I threw that tournament away by having my drag too tight. They would meet my minnow, like we were talking earlier. They would not let the minnow get over the top of them. They would turn away from the boat and head to my minnow. It basically hit it swimming away from me, and there was never an opportunity to do anything. Like, you had a millisecond there before he was skyrocketing, going nuts out there, and I lost all of them doing that. But Drew is right. The vast majority of the time, primarily on largemouth and spots, I want it cranked pretty tight until I hook him, and then once I assess the size and kind of how spunky that particular fish is, then we'll start backing the drag and kind of playing it how it needs to be.
Because the first thing a largemouth's going to do is never going to be go zzz. The first thing a largemouth's going to do, he's going to open his mouth, and you're going to feel him go woo, 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 and then he'll close it and commit to doing whatever he's going to do. But when you first hit him, the first thing he's going to do is go, oh no, I've been hooked. And then he's going to figure out what he's going to do from there. But everybody knows the feeling of hooking a big one. You hook it, and then it goes and just starts tugging. Like, that's kind of my thing there. And with the Nico rig, that has been my great kryptonite many times, and it's cost me winning one tournament. It's cost me, I'm sure, a handful of tournaments where I could have finished better, not hitting them hard enough off the rip with tight enough drag.
Yep.
Because with that Nico, with a lot of those worm techniques, like a drop shot too, hit them hard right off the rip, and you can back off from there. But
what they're both saying, if nobody picked that up, tight drag to loose drag.
Yep.
You don't want to hit them and go zzz. You want to hit them and drive that pin home, and then turn her down.
And then remember to tighten your drag back up when you release the fish.
Yes.
How many times
the
does
other
that
thing
happen?
that I'll say that I've really started to do, and actually I would say this was a misconception. I never really thought about it before, prior to forward facing, but with it, I have noticed. If you watch me, and a lot of people, kind of give me a little crap over it, but everybody talks about how I swing on them like peepaw, like I don't hit them very hard. But what I'm doing is what most people want to do is slackline. When they get a bite, they drop the rod, extend their arms all the way back, whack, and they hit them, and the rod is oftentimes back over their head. So your first move is now to drop your rod and crank down. When you crank down and drop your rod, you just allow that fish to turn its head back away from the boat, which is generally, and worming, which is where this is most important, you just let them turn their head back to whatever piece of cover you just tried to pull them away from initially. So I have started to, when I get a bite, you'll see me, I'll wind down tight and I'll pull back and just start winding as fast as I can. And what I'm doing is as soon as I make contact with that fish, I hopefully turn their head. And as long as I keep winding at least a few feet, let them get away from the cover, I'll keep that head turned towards me. And usually in that split second, like they're going to, just like Drew said, they're going to kind of freak out, figure out this isn't what we intended here. But if in that initial hook set, if whichever direction that their head is turned, that's where they're going to want to try to swim, as long as you don't allow them to turn it in a different direction. So the actual hook set itself, along with the drag, can really help, particularly heavier cover situations. Like you'll watch flipping, a lot of guys really drop and slackline and do all that. It's the worst thing you can do around, a flipping or pitching scenario where there's always going to be some heavy cover. I want to wind down, hit him, and keep winding. And a lot of times, if my line's over something, he'll jump up over the log or the button ball bush, whatever it is that he's in, before he ever even really gets a chance to fight.
See, I always thought I noticed that you do that. I always thought you were giving that fish just a little bit of time to eat the bait.
I am.
You see him commit, he's got it, and then you so it's kind of like you're doing two things at once.
Yeah. But again, I can let him have it and still slackline him, and my rod end up way back here.
Right,
so
gotcha.
That's kind of two totally different deals, but it's all kind of happening in one motion, so to speak.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, let's put a bow on this and shut it down. Man, good luck out there on the circuit. I know, Drew, you got you're like nonstop balls to the wall for however many tournaments, and Jake, it's all getting ready to get going full throttle. So enjoy your warm weather while we're up here in Missouri suffering.
Hey, it's not warm. I should have posted a picture of it.
It ain't 10 degrees, is it?
No, well, it started out like 15 this morning.
Okay.
It did get up to like 40, but I should have posted a picture today. I literally put in, I can't believe I got my boat in the water. Like, it was literally an ice skating rink. When I pulled into the parking lot, the whole truck and boat almost did a complete 360 in the parking lot. I hope my wife's not watching this, but we got in. It was a little interesting, little more work than what it normally is. But we're really chomping at the bit to get this bad event behind us and do whatever it takes to kind of get the ball back rolling in the right direction. Bass fishing is all about decisions. And we love to talk about the good decisions that we make. But I have learned more probably from that one event, just critiquing, and not that I'm second guessing or I've made my peace with that event. I did what I felt like I needed to do. I put myself in a situation there that I really had to make some gambles, and it just didn't work out. But I learned more from that one bad event than I probably did the entire season last year, fishing 12 or 13 events where it just, not everywhere, not every day, but everything kind of went the way it was supposed to for the majority of the year. We had one little hiccup there at the Harris Chain, but overall, you drive away from an event and it's like, not that you didn't learn a lot from that, but it's it's a different, learning factor, I guess. Like the mistakes and kind of where I went wrong, what I did, and what I should have done. I enjoy the strategy and kind of how this format allows us to play the game now. And gosh, it really makes you look like a hero, but it can sure make you look awfully dumb real quick.
Yo, that's fishing, man. That's for sure. You nailed it. That's just fishing. Yep. All right, folks, we're gonna shut it down. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody out there in YouTube land. Jake, Drew, I appreciate your time, man. I know it's valuable.
No doubt.
It was always it's always worth it when you guys come on here. Great conversations. We learn a little bit, and it just it's great insight on what's going on in the professional tournament bass fishing world. So
absolutely, I had a great time.
Thank you,
Looking
guys.
forward to doing it again soon.
yes, sir. All right.
Thanks,
Good night, everyone.